We actually managed to scale to $1 million in ARR without hiring a single employee, including no agencies. We do over 500 demos a month right now. So we get a ton of feedback, what they like, what they don't like. And that's across 7 products. We believe that if there's truly value in your product, then you don't need annual contracts because people will be happy to renew. Why wouldn't they?
The Next Gen Sales Leaders Podcast. Coffees for Closers.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Next Gen Sales Leader Podcast. I'm here with Frank Sondors, who is the founder of Salesforge. He is the myth, the legend, the guy that has run 50 people sales teams, and he has been in tech sales for over a decade. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Ben. Yeah, it's finally we're getting to do this. So yeah, you're super excited.
So what I'm super excited to do is learn from you, one, about your journey, because obviously you've gone through tech sales as a were you in sales as a sales rep? Were you a leader of the sales team? What exactly did you do in your prior career before Salesforge?
So yeah, I started actually my career in quite a good place, I would say, in Google actually. So you would learn all things digital at Google. You got literally like 4 to 6 weeks of onboarding. And then that was my kind of non-SaaS experience, but still tech, right? So, but you get to learn a lot of things and you see a lot of data behind the scenes that you just never see anywhere else. And then I worked with a bunch of SaaS companies after that. Companies like Similar, Black Crow on machine learning front. So that's the old AI. And then, in my previous gig, I used to lead a sales team of 50 people. So it's about, there's about 20 plus SDRs, 10 plus account execs, and then you had a mid-management layer there as well. At that point, I realized, back in those days, it was growth at all costs. So that's why you needed to have so many sales reps. So essentially, labor was essentially the main lever to target attainment. And I thought there's a better way of essentially building pipeline without having all those individuals. So that's why we built Salesforge. I found 2 co-founders on the YC matchmaking platform, funny enough, in Europe. And then we kicked off about 2.5 years ago. Since then we've built, what is it now? We have 7 products, about 6 websites. So it's quite a different beast, I guess, to a typical software company. We just have 1 product. Scaled in the first year to $3 million. We have thousands of customers, predominantly in the US, and continue on scaling.
That's amazing. Well, 1 year to 3 million is not something most people have done in their life, and I know personally how hard that is. So, how did that happen? How do you go from concept to $3 million in revenue in 12 months?
Good question. I don't think it's very simple to answer this question. I think that there's a lot that goes into that, from I guess good timing to building the software for myself. So essentially, because I'm literally building the software for a bunch of VPs out there, right? So I'm trying to figure out what did I have back in my days. So back in my days, I used Outreach. So back in my days of using Outreach, what was missing, what was not working, right? So, and then kind of piecing together these different pieces of software that you need to have in order to see the results that you're looking for. So domain expertise, I think, plays a huge role, as in, you kind of know what needs to be built. And then you find smart engineers to build it with you, right? So we actually managed to scale to $1 million in ARR without hiring a single employee, including no agencies. So I know some people have a ton of agencies behind them, but we had no agencies, no employees. We did manage to scale to $1 million, I remember as well. So back in those days, you would do 20 demos in a day or something. It was super busy times, even nowadays. But I think, also being super, it's typical stuff. I think being close to customers and speaking to, customers every day, whether you do that on a Zoom call or whether you attend a bunch of events. I think what makes it slightly different to a typical story, we do also aggressively attend offline events. We've been always doing that, and we still do that. I think I still have 10 plus events coming up till the end of the year. So the schedule is quite busy. There. And that's because we believe not just building a business just, on LinkedIn or whatever, online or the WhatsApp community, but actually speaking to people in person and connecting to some senior execs, I would say,
This is a break in the podcast to bring you our sponsor, RevyOps.com. That is REVYOPS.com, the #1 GTM data management platform for your GTM and revenue operations data on planet Earth. If you are using the modern stack of Clay and Instantly and Email Bison and RB2B and Trigify and all these various tools scattered across the wind, we unify all that data all into one place so you don't have any duplicates, a unified view of every single contact so you can see all the data and all the activities across all the platforms all in one place. It will allow you and your team to move faster, to get better attribution across the entire funnel, and to make a heck of a lot more money. Go to RevyOps.com, check out how you can get started today with me on a call where we'll learn about your data management problems and how we can get you guys to the next level of growth. See you guys at RevyOps.com. Go there now. It will be in the show notes as well down below. Let's get back to the podcast.
In person, understanding the pains in a lot more depth than over a Zoom call. And then building a software for more for, I would say, mid-market enterprise companies, which is where we're actually ultimately headed. Yeah, I wouldn't say that there is something that, we did. I think we were just very, we would just work, 7 days a week, and always at it, always, shipping something new, always talking to customers. And I know a lot of other people say they're talking to customers, but then I sometimes ask them, hey, how many customers you've spoken to last week? And they'll say like 2 or 3. And then I'll be like, 20, 40 customers. I think the velocity definitely matters, because we're just always very, very, very active in the space. And it's just hard to get it wrong, right? If you're listening to your customers and you're building as a software for them, it's hard to get it wrong. So yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned YC, and I know that one of the things that they like to say is that the best founders are the ones solving the problem for themselves. And that's kind of to your point, because to your point about domain expertise. So I have a book called The $1 Million Pitch Method. It's how I've closed tens of millions of dollars in software sales. I also go back to kind of being a sales rep at these software companies selling big deals. And in my book, the whole chapter is be a subject matter expert. And it's like, if you don't have that, then 1, you don't have credibility. But 2 is, if you're the one building the product, you're probably building something based upon some weird cobbled together feedback from a bunch of users. If you are smart enough to even talk to users, some people just build the product, but if you're doing it from this core, like, I know this pain and I know the edge cases of this pain and I know where it goes, then it's like you pretty much have 80% or 90% of the problem solved. And then in the course of building the product and going to market, you start to discover all those little extra edge cases that maybe you didn't experience in your own personal life. But I think it's by far the best way to go to market. So what was the first version of Salesforge? What was the first kind of seed product?
Good question. So, before we get to, I guess, the first version, we did a couple of things, actually. So, because we run it as sort of a proper process, just like in sales. So, on one hand, we did like 40 user interviews. So, these were semi-structured interviews, all recorded, unless somebody said they didn't want to, have it recorded. But we literally recorded 40 user interviews. We stored all of that on our Google Drive so that at any moment we could go back and review those and review the outputs of those interviews. And then trying to triangulate the feedback, trying to decide what's actually painful. Because people will tell you, hey, this is broken, that is broken, but then the other, 39 people won't even mention that, right? So you're definitely looking for patterns, and then you're trying to triangulate that with your domain expertise. Because back in the days, we were looking at, okay, how much does it, cost us to acquire an extra dollar, a SaaS dollar, right? So we're looking at these sort of metrics in the board and stuff like that. So. And then, before even shipping anything, we literally span up a landing page for like $10 a year to explain what we want to do, which is essentially a consolidated stack, which consists of multiple softwares, which is what we have today. And the idea is to ultimately generate more pipeline with significantly fewer hits. And that was the story back then, literally when ChatGPT just came out. One of the things we wanted to test out, if this existed, would somebody actually pay for this? So we actually managed to pull off, we managed to essentially have 4 customers before shipping even a single line of code. And we thought to ourselves, damn, if there are 4 businesses, people that are willing to pull out the credit card and pay for something that doesn't even exist, there's just landing page and no single line of code, then we may be onto something, right? So and we just need to pursue it further. And it also gave it the motivation to the other two co-founders, and they're on the tech front, to actually build this and plow ahead and leave their jobs and stuff like that. So, and I think, the first version was definitely raw. So if somebody's familiar with, with the world of sort of sequencing, etc. So the sequencer is the first product that we built. It's just our mothership product. So back then, all we wanted to do is just deliver what we call unique emails, which essentially were computed by GPT, back then GPT-3, and we would deliver a unique email to every single prospect in 20 different languages. And back then, that was like, wow. And then the other companies started to do exactly the same thing, so it became less and less of wow. So there's a lot of competitors. But the product was like super, super raw. But I still remember we were onboarding this first customer in the US. It was an agency. It was a PR agency, funny enough. So it wasn't even a typical lead gen agency, but it was a PR agency, and we were onboarding them. And the typical first thing you need to do in the cold email space is to warm up the domains and mailbox, etc. But we didn't have that even in place. There was no warm up. There was just an ability to fire off some emails, and so we were onboarding sort of the first customer sort of manually on the warm-up pool that did exist. It just that it wasn't hooked up to the software. But yeah, from then on, we grew quite quickly. Actually, we got 100 customers within like 3 months on just a sequencer product. But quickly we realized sort of within 3 months there was something else that was blocking us to actually help. Is sort of for us to see that hockey stick growth, which is what got us to $3 million. And that's the infrastructure piece. Essentially, we always were blocked by not having the domain set up, not having the mailbox set up. And as a result, we couldn't board a customer, so our pipeline was kind of blocked there quite frequently. Actually, one of the things I was doing, I was literally manually setting up for customers domains and mailbox, I remember back then. Literally me setting up, because somebody just was either unwilling to do that or whatever. So we charged them some money to set up the domains and spin up the domains on GoDaddy and bunch of Google accounts, I think, back then. And then we thought to ourselves, damn, we have to solve this problem, because otherwise we're never going to scale. So this is how we came up immediately to our sort of second product. So essentially to solve the second pain, which was infrastructure, and that's how we got to Mailforge.ai. So Mailforge.ai is an infrastructure product that provisions domains and mailboxes. Has massively changed since we launched, but yeah, the second product was the infrastructure product. So sort of within 6 months, we already had 2 products. But the second product took off significantly faster than the first product. So the majority of the revenue back in the days was coming from the infrastructure business. And yeah, that's a story where I guess the second product is the product that really took off far beyond our expectations back then. And then we started to build more and more product depending on the pains of been seeing. And that's, I think, how we got to like 7 products over the last 2.5 years. And I think the reason why we're able to ship, I guess, that much and that fast, I mean, it's much easier to build software today than it was like 3 years ago, right? So that's one thing. But the second thing is, I think the mindset that we have in the company, essentially our engineers are a bit like salespeople, where they have monthly quotas. So there's monthly targets that they have in place. They need to hit those. And that typically means shipping net new features. So every engineer that we have ships typically anywhere between 2 to 5 features net new every month. And that's across the 7 products that we have. And yeah, and this is, I think, that this sort of velocity allowed us to get to this sort of model of having multiple softwares. And so that model is known as software compound model. You're ultimately essentially compounding multiple pieces of software. You're selling that to the same user and to the same buyer. And you can kind of think of it a bit like the Apple ecosystem. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I want to unpack, there's so much good, juicy lessons there that I think any first-time entrepreneur may miss if I don't somehow call it out. So I want to just describe this to some people, because being a software founder myself, multi-time, I know what you just described, and it's like the perfect path, right? But for those that aren't there, they're looking to say like, okay, well, I want to start a software company, or I want to launch a product. What is the first thing I should do? And I think we've already covered this, which is become a subject matter expertise in something and find a deep problem. Don't worry about building a solution, just become deeply interested in kind of an ecosystem of problems that all relate to each other and that are difficult and painful. And there's nothing out there currently that solves it in the way that you want. So when you feel that like guttural, like I can't sleep at night type of pain, or this like really is blocking me, like to your point, that's a good starting point. But there's a great like piece of this, and this was the thing that screwed me up for the first, I'd say, 5 years of my career, which is I was really good at sales, and I would always go in and align myself with a startup team, and their product chops were not good enough. And I wasn't a product guy back in the day, so I didn't understand. I was like, I can sell it, and I would sell millions of dollars of deals, but we would churn so fast because the product didn't keep up. And so there's a great quote from Naval, I think is Ravikant, I can't remember the guy's name, but he basically says something like, you only do sales because you're not good at marketing, and you only do marketing because you're not good at product. And that's the key lesson here, which is like, there's two sales guys sitting on a podcast talking about launching a business. And the thing we focused on is, how do you actually build the right product based upon the right problem? And then how do you ship features around that? And that's what leads to the initial growth. It's not being just particularly amazing at sales, although that's helpful, right? It's building the right problem for the right solution for the right problem at the right time with the right people. And then everything came off of that. So you said you attracted co-founders because there was proof, and that made them feel confident that they could get involved. And I've personally experienced that, where like I can't get really good devs involved as a partner until I've proven some basic level of traction, because they could go work on 1,000 other things. And so I'd say that all of that is a critical path that we just described. But then there's another nuance that you said, which is in the process of going to market, you launched a landing page, and that landing page led to the first 4 clients. Now, this is a very tricky spot, because people will hear that and go, oh, okay, I'm just going to go launch vaporware, right? And vaporware is a phrase for just saying like, I'll just launch something that sucks and just try to sell it. And the thing is you do want to do what Frank just did, but you also want to just tell people, hey, you have to just be upfront that, hey, this isn't built yet. We're going to build this, and you can be on our wait list. Because the key thing is, if you promise it too early, they're going to be like, where is it? And you're going to lose credibility. You're going to hurt your brand. So just make sure you don't trip on that. But then once you launch and you ship the first product, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it does have to be complete enough to address the problem. And then the final little thing that you said, which is very critical, is that you were actively listening to clients, not just like slightly, but like deeply listening. And you were solving the little edge cases that came up. And that's what then continued to build the product, which probably created more word of mouth growth because you were so involved and people saw how much you cared. So anyways, I wanted to unpack that for people because it was a brilliant explanation, and I wanted to give the meta level analysis that I was hearing.
I mean, the one thing maybe on the domain expertise, like if somebody, if you don't have the domain expertise, get that domain expertise into your team. It could come in many different sort of shapes and forms. The domain expert could be the customer actually that you're pulling into your co-founding team. Because I think it's sometimes it's tricky to have the domain expertise, but you can still be super successful, right? So where, who's having that domain expertise? But in a lot of cases, it is the CEO, right, of the company. Yes, because you had, my pain was I saw all the what I would typically call the dead wood in the sales team, essentially people that should not be in sales, and I was trying to figure out how do you reduce headcount, and I understood that the software that I was using to build pipeline is not designed for headcount reduction, because guess what? They get paid if the more salespeople there are, the more money they make because they charge per seat. So I know that things were not really aligning there, and so that's why, for example, we don't charge per seat for anything that we have in our company. Everything is usage based, right? So, and we also see that from a CAC standpoint. So CAC means cost of customer acquisition. Essentially, CAC is moving from labor to software. So we see teams in the US and Europe in particular, teams becoming leaner and meaner. So, but they're still acquiring aggressively pipeline, but a lot of that acquisition lies within the software today. And it's something that you're able to achieve today. It's something you're not able to do like 3-4 years ago, because you have all this automation going on, whether that's on NA10, Make.com, Zapier, you name it, a bunch of different tools, Clay.com, and on all that jazz, right? So, and that's what unlocked quite new possibilities really in the space. And but it's still funny for me, at least funny, it's to see that there's a lot of tech companies out there that don't use any form of agentic systems or automation still, and I'm just kind of surprised. But then at the same time, I'm thinking to myself, hey, my mom doesn't use even ChatGPT, so I think the society is massively shifting, and we will definitely see more and more as we progress into the future. Essentially, these lean and mean teams, they're going to be starting, working more essentially more and more with agentic systems in different sort of shapes and forms. So we will see that across not just in sales, but also in finance and other spaces as well. So.
Mm-hmm. There was another thing you said that I think is a step that most early entrepreneurs skip, and you guys didn't, which is you said you had 40 client conversations before you even launched the landing page prototype. And anybody listening, if that sounds scary to you, my belief, because I used to ask the question when I was in my mid-20s, how do you do market research? And it was like this deep burning question for me, because I thought there was like some weird, like thick book that would tell me how to do market research. And I actually bought a thick book that's like this thick that talks about market research. And it went into this very crazy macroeconomic analysis with spreadsheets and stuff. And in my experience of now doing this enough, I just call it the 1,000 conversations. And it's kind of like I'm overblowing that requirement. It could be 40 conversations. But the point is that you go identify your ideal customer profile, and you come up with a list of them, just like in any normal list building scenario. And you have a hypothesis that these are the right people, and they all need to look pretty damn similar. Like that, you even if it's like dentists, you don't go with Nigerian dentists and then Texas dentists. It's like, no, find a bunch of Texas dentists that you think fit your criteria, that have the certain amount of revenue and basic ICP stuff. But then there's in my school community. So if you go to my LinkedIn profile, Benjamin Reed, I have a school community in there. There's something called Launch Your Offer. Within that, there's something called the Mom Test. It's a free PDF book, and it's the best surveying questions that you can get as a free like crash course on how to do it. And then it gives you all the questions to ask, like what's your top 3 problems? How are you solving that? What do you like about that? When is this coming up for you? And just mom test people. So there's a whole book on it. I'm not going to try to reteach that, but that's a critical thing that it sounds like you did. And then you synthesized all of these pieces of information, and then you put it into like your initial product hypothesis. Is that right? Or did I miss anything?
Yeah, so we used the mom test. I didn't mention the mom test, but yeah, that's exactly what we did. So it's literally a 1 to 2 page, sort of semi-structured sort of interview that we have just a bunch of questions. Yeah, so a lot of that was from the mom test, and then we're just trying to dig deep into what problems do they have. And we're trying to see patterns, right? And understand what is happening right now. Because of course, I'm very biased. I've been in sales for 10 years, so I could be like, why would I need to speak to all those people, right? I know what I'm doing. But yeah, you encounter kind of various different things, and I think we encountered also new competitors that we have never thought of, that they even existed. So we spoke to, a lot of different people, but they actually also have different titles, from SDRs to account execs to RevOps people, different size of companies actually. But yeah, predominantly US and Europe, which is our 2 territories, but even founders, right? But essentially anybody that was very close to the topic of pipeline and was very passionate about it and very passionate about sort of fixing it, or how they were looking at it from a different lens, from PLG-based companies or product-led growth kind of companies to SLG, so sales-led growth companies. How do they look at the topic of pipeline? And because naturally they'll mention different metrics, and there's different sort of things that they're worried about. So once you have those 4 interviews, so naturally, when you record all of that, right? Because I was the only person from the Forge that was, in the interview, I can, pass on all that sort of evidence naturally to the other 2 co-founders, right? So to build a conviction around this topic and why they should, leave their jobs and ship a ton of code. And and on top of that, naturally, you need, the best form of evidence or best form of validation is, if people are actually paying you for something that doesn't exist. It was pretty cool, right? So they definitely haven't seen anything like this. That's how we built a conviction around why we should plow ahead. And on the website, we did say that the product is coming out within 3 months. And it was the case. We'll literally launch it within 3 months. I think we were back then, it was like March, May, April time. We were saying, hey, we're looking to launch this. If this was available in the next 3 months, would you be up for signing up? You got to get a really good deal, and that's it. And then we launched in June, and then, the rest is history. So
there's for anybody listening, they're like, okay, so you asked all these questions from the mom test, you recorded the interviews, you put them in a Google Drive, now you could probably just take the transcript and just like ask it to like synthesize the top problems, but you probably listened to it, you probably read the transcripts. And then for me, like my next step is what I call the top 6 challenges document. So we actually did this for ReviOps when we were launching ReviOps, is we had the client conversations. Also as a GTM agency owner, I knew them. So I had my first set of assumptions. Then I went out and with the whole point of the mom test, everyone listening, is that you don't put your beliefs into the world. You just simply just listen. And so, but out of that, you'll hear the top 6 challenges that everyone's saying. And so the key thing is there's this level, this is like breakthrough advertising. If anyone listens to me on my podcast, I just talk about Eugene Schwartz, breakthrough advertising, like got to get this book. But the reason I bring it up is that there's people in an unaware state and a problem-aware state. And the thing is, these people might have a problem, but they don't recognize it. So what you're looking for is problem-aware state. And you might see additional unaware things around them or solution-aware pieces. But if they're not at least problem-aware, then you have to do a bunch of education. And that's a very difficult thing to get early traction on. So you want to look for problem-aware, itemize it, and then I actually create something, this is also in the school group, called the problem-aware document. And it's just like a Canva template where you can go and literally just say problem 1, solution 1, problem 2, solution 2. And what I do after I get that is I go on LinkedIn and I send DMs and I say, hey, we're in beta. We solve the top 5 problems for X ICP. So in our cases for ReviOps, it was, here's the top 5 problems, top 6 problems for cold email agencies. I'd love to know if this is true for you. And I knew it was true because I listened to 40, 50 people. And then people would say, this is, you explained it perfectly. This is exactly what we're dealing with. And then they would jump on a call with me and then I would talk to them about the product. But that's a great way to get your first 20 or 30 users, is just to circulate the top 6 challenges and to see if you get agreement. So I'm just curious, did you do a similar thing, or how did you, of all the conversations, how did you settle on the ones that were worth focusing on? How did you think through that?
Good question. So I haven't done this bit, so you definitely are more sophisticated on this front, I guess. So because, so we had, quite a strong conviction as to what is it that we need to build, and we needed to, I guess, cross-reference definitely with the user into. So there's definitely a bit of a bias because we had our kind of path set as to what is it that we're looking to do, but we wanted to de-risk that. So de-risk kind of going ahead and spending, all these months and all this money, on building this product. And then people wouldn't want to have that, right? So we simply cross-reference, I guess, our assumption as to what's broken in the space. So we knew that the main problem that we are seeing, and that would keep it accelerating, is what we call the CAC problem. Ultimately, acquiring net new dollars, doesn't matter whether it's in software or other space, it's just simply becoming more and more expensive. Due to more competition, due to whatever inflation and multiple other problems. So the software stack had to be shaken up a fair bit. And it's not like we would sort of niche down into a particular area like you did, right? So because we knew we had to build a lot of software, so we just needed to figure out which software did we start with. And we knew that the core product, which is the mothership product, so the sequencer, had to be really the first one. And then we would branch out from there on into other products. But we needed to understand, we needed to understand particularly one topic, which is what we call the consolidation topic. I think back then, there was a research done by Salesforce where it said something along the lines that, sales reps only spend like 20-something%, actually doing selling for the rest of the time and actually doing something else. And we knew that partially that the problem of that is also the stack that people are being used, that they're using, because they do a lot of kind of different things within different tools, and they're actually not really speaking to customers. So that's also partially the reason why we had to solve the stack issue. where the issue essentially, we call that the Android world, where people essentially are buying solutions from multiple different vendors. And we are envisioning the world where essentially you as a sales leader, you go to one vendor that really specializes in building pipeline, and that would be us, or somebody else, right? But essentially it's solving the consolidation problem that people are facing. But talking about consolidation as a topic and trying to understand what are the pains in there, it was a bit, I would say, tricky to dig out. I would say let's say a juicy insight, and that's because the problem that we're solving is, I guess, so big. How do you consolidate this whole thing, this whole space, right? There's so many players, so many legacy players making six figures in ARR. Not six figures in that. Meaning they're making hundreds of millions of dollars in ARR. Sorry, that's what I want to say. But there's also like hundreds of players in this space. It's very, very fragmented. But at the same time, we knew there's no company that exists in our category where we would look at them like Google, like it's very impossible to compete against them. So we knew that all players that we have in the space, we could compete against them quite well. We just need to figure out what is the stack that we would build that would be so good that people would want to switch over to us. And I think it's also trying to understand, I think one of the things that we're trying to understand, what would make you switch away from your current stack that you had, right? So these multiple solutions. What would make you switch over to something else? Because I think there's definitely quite a high switching cost in this category, right? People don't want to necessarily switch in, let's say, the mid-market enterprise space. That's what we're targeting. And I think we still don't have, from back then, from that research, we don't still have the answers, I think. And I think it's okay. So I think we have just simply our thought process. We had to de-risk this thing enough for us to go ahead and actually ship code and do sales and everything, right? And I think we felt good enough about that. So I know it's not very scientific, but it's a more of a tummy feeling, I guess, as well. A lot of that, that what we're doing, the three of us, the three co-founders, we have enough conviction in this thing that we should plow ahead. Because the problem that we wanted to take on you couldn't understand that really. You couldn't understand that really well, and the people that we would talk to maybe would not be, like you described, problem aware. They know that that multiple softwares, fragmented stack is not what they want. So it's kind of obvious was to everybody. But trying to dig deeper and kind of analyzing different problems. So sure, there's like hundreds of different problems. So the ROS person would say, hey, I have a bunch of reporting issues and like that they want to get rid of, or like integration issues that they want to get rid of. The SDR would say, hey, I have to click on this solution, then this solution, then this solution, and I'm spending time in different softwares. So, but these are sort of obvious things. Like it's not like you encounter something that you would say, oh, I've learned something, But it's just to validate that, is this actually painful, and how painful that is, and would people be willing to pay for a different experience, or what we call the Apple experience? And our answer was yes at the end of it. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much good stuff here. So I would say that like when people are transitioning, and this is especially with like multiple stacks into one stack, you mentioned something like there's a switching cost. And when I think about, I'm looking at a sales process or a go-to-market motion, I typically look at believability, like how believable is it? And then I look at where's the friction, right? And so obviously the friction here is that you have a sales leader or a set of people, maybe the CMO, the CRO, maybe some SDR director, and they all love their little tool, right? And they're like, I don't want to give up X tool or Y tool. And so I guess a question I'd have is, how did you overcome that friction? Is it because the pain threshold was just so high, people were willing to galvanize and get around this like kind of bigger vision of like, we can have it all, and yes, we have to give up beloved tools, but we're going to get such a better, collaborative experience? Or how do you overcome that? Or does that just not come up? Are people just willing to just give it all up because the experience sucks?
Well, it's not the experience. Essentially, if people are not seeing results with the current stack, it becomes much easier for them to switch. Essentially, they believe something is broken. I don't know. I spoke to, for example, a customer today. He was saying, Frank, listen, I was spending so much money on Zoom Info. It's just horrible. I want something that's like Zoom Info, but wouldn't break the bank, right? So one of the things that we're doing as well is we are definitely trying to make it affordable for most of the companies out there, right? So we're very affordable against big boys like Zoom Info, for example. And so cost definitely is one of the things. So somebody was paying 10x more for this, for a worse product, according to them, right? So versus something like this where they believe, this product actually fits better for my needs. And then it becomes then it's like a no-brainer, right? Unless you're locked into an annual contract with one of the vendors out there. But yeah, we also don't do any contracts at all as well. We believe that if there's truly value in your product, then you don't need annual contracts because people will be happy to renew. Why wouldn't they, right? So, and I think, so yeah, cost is definitely one thing. The other one is like people just don't see any results with their stack. So they're using some form of a legacy software. And it used to work really well, like, a few years ago, but it doesn't work anymore. So they're looking for something new. And yeah, so they're sort of, they're sort of warmed up to the idea of totally dropping whatever they have and then transitioning to something new. And they know that there's a lot of new gen tools out there. So we're not the only one, right? There's like 100 other ones out there, pretty cool solutions out there. And they're just trying to get their head around what is it that they need. And they're looking at kind of simple things even. Well, to me, it's simple, but like, does it integrate with Salesforce? Does it have a bidirectional sync? How about clay.com? Like, does it integrate with that, and a few other things. Does it have webhooks? So how good is the API, All of these kind of things that I know it's kind of sounds like anybody can do this, but like to build a like really good API or to make sure that you have integration with Clay or have a proper, super, well built out bidirectional sort of, integration with HubSpot, it's actually pretty difficult, to pull that off. It takes some time. It's not that easy, but that's it. People want this sort of, they look at this as basics. And so if you don't have that, actually, in a lot of cases, you don't have a chance to speak to a lot of sophisticated companies or companies that are pay a lot of money. But if you have all of that in place, actually switching over is actually much easier, we found, because we're ultimately, whenever we're speaking to a lot of the people that we want to do business with, we're trying to figure out what is stopping them to transition over to us. Is it just the fact that they have a contract, lasting for another 6 months? There's a solution to that as well. We could buy them out. Sometimes we would do that, right? If I want to be really aggressive, we could do that. But typically we just ask, do we have all the integrations in place? Is there something is missing? So for example, for some of the customers, they said, Frank, we will never, transition over to you unless you decide to launch LinkedIn, which is something that we did recently. And then there's other companies, for example, that would tell me, hey, Frank, unless you have a dialer, I will never switch over to Salesforce. So then we know what we need to build next. And so we're going to build dialer next year, for example. And this is the feedback that we get actually on a daily basis. We do over 500 demos a month right now. So we get a ton of feedback, what they like, what they don't like. And that's across 7 products. And so then, we to categorize that feedback is actually quite challenging, I would say. But yeah, as long as you stay close to the customer, I think you can't get it wrong. You just need to understand what's the next thing that you should be building, right? So what kind of, helps you to get, closer to where you want to be, or, in the next sort of 3 to 6 months. And because, we make targets for product engineering literally on a monthly basis, we're not even sure what's going to happen in 2 or 3 months. So this is why, the roadmap is pretty fluid. We're trying to figure out what's the most painful thing for the customers, or you just go ahead and build that. So we don't even have a problem like sort of, what we're going to do next quarter. Like nobody knows what we're going to do next quarter. We just have a rough idea that next year we're going to build, for example, just a couple of things which are super important for our customers. And the rest is depending on the feedback that we're going to be getting from our clients. So
yeah, makes a lot of sense. when I think about like in a very complicated world like yours, right? There's kind of the big obvious thing, which we're not getting results from our stack. I think that's kind of like the thing that everyone can rally around. But then within that, it's like, well, what does that mean? Well, this particular dialer sucks and this integration isn't great and Bob doesn't actually answer his emails because, like whatever. Like we could probably come up with a 400, point list on all the things that could come up. And for me, again, I like to look at principles of like, okay, where do you focus first? And there's I think this actually may have come from somebody from Y Combinator, but somebody said something along the lines of like, if you ask a client, so there's obviously the net promoter score, right? Everyone knows that. On a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend this to a friend? That's kind of an obvious one. You want to be above a 9. Now, the other thing is the pain threshold question, which I think is useful, which is if I took away this feature from you, would this be devastating to you? Would it be neutral, or would it be not a big deal? And somebody said you want at least a 40%, this would be devastating to me, feature request. So for me, like when I go to market with new features and I say like, look, this is the problem we're solving and here's the feature. And I ask people, rather than just saying, would this be useful to you? Because I just always get, yeah, that'd be useful. It's like, well, how do you prioritize in the course of 100 useful things what to do next as a product development company? Because we're constantly every day looking at our development priority list and going, what do we do? And for all of us at ReviOps, every client has a Slack channel and every client has a Google Sheet. And this is probably the most archaic way to do it, but this is how we do it, where people can put in feature requests and then that rolls up into a master sheet. And then we review that every day and go, what did we get as a request? And then we have something called critical, high, average, low. And in the critical, we have them rank, we have the customer rank. A 5 is like you're bleeding. Like it's like you're about to die. Five critical on a critical request is like, I will leave it in the next 2 weeks if you don't change this. Down to a 1 critical. And so we only focus on critical 1 through 5s. Anything below gets deprioritized. So that's the way that we do it. But for us, it's like we're constantly asking for our clients to rank their pain, because I'm like, look, like I need to know why and I need a context. And then we have them take videos. We have them open up the console for the dev environment if there's some weird thing that they're noticing from a bug. So for us, prioritization in this way is just fundamental, because we only have so many devs. We only have so much time. We have to prioritize, and we let the clients kind of lead the way. But this is also why like choosing the right clients is really critical in the beginning, because if you choose the wrong ICP for the wrong problem, you're going to go build a bunch of features for people that will never scale. So you do have to be aware of like, okay, we're solving this problem right now for these people, and we can see that the market is constrained to say 500 users, but we need some type of escape valve that all this effort is somehow leading to some other tangential market or upmarket opportunity. So I'm constantly thinking about like now, but also like, is this actually getting us to the North Pole? Which brings me to a question that I have for you. I had a guest on the show, I don't know, this is like going back a year ago, Yuri from AI SDR. He's the founder of AI SDR. And he said something to me that changed the way that I look at companies in terms of startups. And this is why the power of like a single phrase can like recascade the entire framework that you look through the world at. And he said something like, I don't mind competitive markets. And for me, like at the time, as naive as this now sounds when I say it out loud, is I was like, man, I avoid competitive markets. I like to go find my like niche of niches in a non-competitive market and then just go dominate it. And that's what I did in the oil and gas space when I was building software. But of course, I ended up, it's not competitive for a reason. It's like people don't have a big enough problem. And if it was big enough, you'd have competition. So Yuri, he said something to that effect of like, I know that if I have a differentiated enough product that has a unique value prop, and we have a particular vision that's different than the other competition, even in a big bloody ocean, we can win and take some market share. And that changed my life in terms of the way I thought about building product. I'm curious, now as you can see, I still have that belief, which is go find your beachhead market, dominate that, and have spillover markets. I still believe that. You guys kind of were like, okay, screw all that. I'm going after like the big boys. We're going to go and, tackle a very obvious problem in a very bloody market. How did you think about competition? I know that you mentioned that there wasn't a big Google that's going to kill you, but how did you reconcile being different enough? Was it just saying, look, there's enough demand, it doesn't matter if there's competition? How do you think through that?
Good question. So there's multiple sort of ways to answer this. So first and foremost, so I'm also more of a red ocean guy. So I would never do blue oceans, meaning no competition. So the redder the ocean, the better. So, but you just need to know how to compete. Yes, how to have your own sort of wedge in the market and how to be differentiated, et cetera, right? So, but what is that differentiation? So there's a couple ways to answer this. So let's take the AI SDR kind of example. So we also have our own AI SDR, namely Agent Frank, so named after me. There'll be other AI SDRs with other names, right? But the first one kind of was named after me because I've been in frontline sales for a while. But so imagine there's a bunch of softwares that build these AI SDRs, and then there are let's call the other softwares that only deal with humans. Let's go that way. And something that I mentioned early on is I'm a big believer that we are all headed towards a reality where you will be forced to work with AI agents. So what I'm a big believer is building an environment where you can seamlessly onboard your sales team, but also in tandem, you can spin up the agents and you can build, let's call it workflows or whatever, a plan, a go-to-market plan where you do attack the market with humans and AI agents. So there are some spaces naturally where you humans will be always there. So for example, cold calling, because due to regulatory restraints, you can't just apply AI agents and let them do cold calls, right? So, so that's something that where humans will be doing that all the time. And then when it comes to maybe any form of sort of emailing or any form of maybe social execution like LinkedIn and stuff like that, you would argue that on average, an AI agent is better on average. So that's one story. Okay, so you got a bunch of AI agent companies and you got a bunch of sort of human companies. And so our positioning is we blend both. So that's the path that we're taking. That's our differentiation, maybe from a let's call it automation or agentic kind of standpoint. The other one would be, I would say, is the compound model. So I would typically compare us to companies that I would call super apps. So you have one brand, one website, you have a software, it's a killer software, and you just keep building more and more features on top of it. And then you cram a lot more features and you're able to sell through a bunch of different add-ons, right, to that customer. And that's how you get big, right, through this sort of super app concept. Now, I don't believe in that. And the reason why I don't believe in that is because this category is so big. You have to build so many features to really solve the pipeline problem really well. You will end up something like Salesforce, where there will be so many features that you'll only use like 10, 20% of the feature set. Whereas I always thought to myself, so if that's the case, right? So if, the space is very big, we have to build a lot of stuff. If we would cram all of that just into Salesforce, so the data and the infrastructure and whatever else we do, right? We would become like Salesforce. And we didn't want to become like Salesforce. We believe in the better UX, UI. So if there are, specific chunks of the software, let's call it the module, that could be decoupled for better UX, better monetization, then why wouldn't you do that, right? And this is why we're building these different other brands around the main brand. And that's what makes us different. Typically, folks will come up to me and say, Frank, I have never seen anything like this. Yeah, like all these brands, it's crazy. Why didn't you build this all into one brand, And that's exactly the point. That's what makes us different, right? So, there's also saying, while there's zig, we zag, so we just want to do things differently. And that's, so some people will like that. And then there will be other people that will not like that. So I think there are benefits and disadvantages, advantage and disadvantages to doing this. But a lot of people will get it. I think especially the mid-market enterprise companies that are used to buying multiple products, multiple softwares to solve their big problem, they are used to this experience. Whereas I think the SMB segment I would say the SMB segment, when they are presented with multiple problems, I think it has a negative impact on our business. So we have to, we're building really more the experience for the mid-market enterprise. So we try to understand how do they buy, and they do buy typically multiple softwares to solve their big problem, and they have the budgets, they're willing to pay. I don't think there's a. The problem is the category is so big, and there's so many problems that need to be solved, and that's what makes it difficult, I think, to have the ideal approach for what is it that we're building.
How do you position? Because given that it's a bloody market, there's a lot of noise, right?
Yep.
And I remember getting a call from HubSpot. This is like circa 2013. And I remember just getting a call because I was like into whatever landing page builder I liked. And I liked all these different disparate tools. And I was, I loved my little stack. I felt, kind of cool that I had this little stack that I'd built. And ironically, I was on Salesforce, but I still had these other tools. And by the way, I hate Salesforce, so please do not quote me on that. I use Close as a CRM, and not to say it's the best thing, but it's good enough for what I'm doing at the moment. So, but the thing is, I remember getting a call, and he was like, "Yeah, so we actually have a landing page builder," and I was like, "Okay," and he's like, "Yeah, and we also have a CRM." I don't know if they had a CRM at that time, but they had something else. Like it was like whatever content management, blog management, SEO thing, like, right. They had a combination of tools all in one place. And I remember like being like, okay, but I was like, well, let me see your landing page software. I'm like, I don't like that. But it was like, my objection was like, I didn't like that one piece of the software. So, and that killed the whole deal. But in your world, you don't have to worry about that because you can be like, okay, you don't like that one? Here's the one over here. Completely different kind of brand, still under the umbrella. But nonetheless, you still kind of have a similar problem, which is like, how do you position? Where do you start? Is it completely different sales motions for the different softwares? Do you have one lead product that you like go after and then you get everyone else to like buy into the other softwares? How do you think about this? This is a very deep question.
Good question. So we have 7 products, so literally 7 subscriptions, and then under them a bunch of add-ons. So there's a lot of you can sort of kind of expand on. So when you have something like this, typically you would say that this is a land and expand strategy. So we're literally trying to land a customer on a single subscription. That's it, and then expand from there on, right? So whether you would start with the sequencer product, the AI agent, whatever, or the infrastructure data products we have as well, whatever that is, but we just want you to land. And typically, whenever we have these demos, these 500 demos that we typically have on a monthly basis, we sit down and we try to figure out what's not working. What do you need? And do a proper quick discovery. People are aware about all the various kind of competitors that are in the market. And we're just trying to figure out what's broken. And sometimes they just need some data, so we'll sell them some data. Sometimes they need the whole thing, we'll sell them the whole thing. Sometimes they want to buy 4 subscriptions, let's go for that. Sometimes they value their time a lot and they want to rather use the AI SDR. We can go with that. So we're really trying to figure out what is it that they need, and then based on that, we have essentially a plan for them of what they should do. Sometimes we're not actually a fit at all for anything whatever they're saying. We would refer them to competitors, and that's fine for us, right? I think at the end of the day, we want to make sure that they feel like this was a positive call, even though we're not a fit, right? They know where to go and what to do, etc. But because we have so many products, we're not forced to sell one product, right? Most companies just have one product. We're not forced to sell that one product. So as a result, because we have multiple products, our conversion rates are very high from demo to close one. It's you should be doing a proper discovery, right? So you should try to understand, what's broken, what do they want to happen, what's important for them, what are the targets when it comes to how many demos they want to book, etc. Whether we're the right solution, sometimes we're not. And then kind of going from there. But we're in a good position because we have so many products, and it's much easier for my reps. So essentially my reps are more consultants than anything, I think. Because, as long as they listen to the customer, as long as they ask the right questions and do a good job, they'll sell something. So. Same
kind of issue with ReviOps, because ReviOps, my software company, it has a lot of use cases. Like it's like, okay, well, what are you trying to solve for? And I think that the thing is like that I see with most, especially big box, what I call salespeople, is they're so used to having such a reputable brand around them, like a Salesforce, for example. I'll never hire a sales rep from Salesforce. I just won't do it. Or HubSpot or any big brand. And the reason for that is because they're so used to being hand-fed kind of like obvious deals that come through like a very clear like filter of it's Google, you know, and like there's a particular product category and it's like they're just going to buy, so let me just show it to them. And so I do a lot of hiring. It's still even in the oil and gas industry, and where I hire sales reps and enterprise sales reps, and I interview these people, and I constantly get these gold-plated resumes across my desk where it's like guy who has $10 million in personal sales under his belt in the last 5 years and 2, 4, 6 years, whatever, like some reasonable metric. And I go, so, okay, so tell me about your cycle. And they'll be, you know, like, okay, well, I had a pre-sales person, I had a sales engineer, I had a post-sales person, I had an account manager, I have a proposal person and a sales ops person. And it's like, dude, like, you know, you're not even like having to do anything. You just show up to the demo. And so here's my sales engineer. You know, it's like, he's going to show you the product now. And then he shows the product. And then it's like, so what's the next steps? It's like, that's the guy's role. And for me, it's like, especially in RevOps, it's like, if I do that, first off, I wouldn't sell anything. So for me, it's like very critical when I jump on a call. One, ICP has to be a fit. Like if I get some random dude, I'm like, why do you even want to jump on this call? I mean, kind of obvious stuff, but it's like, I just won't just take a call. Like they have to be a certain type of company with a certain type of problem and stack. And so then the next question is when they jump on, I'm like, what problem are you solving? Like you obviously saw some of my content. You obviously like watched one of my posts. You obviously are interested in something. What is the problem? If they can't articulate the problem, I'm on red alert. I'm like, I don't want to show you a demo because I can show you a bunch of cool stuff and it's meaningless because it's not in the context of a real pain. So for me, it's like, that's a very big warning sign. Now, luckily, most of my people are pre-qualified. And this is another reason why I don't do large scale LinkedIn content. This is a fun fact about me, which like most people don't know. I used to be one of the air quote most engaged people on LinkedIn for the lead gen category, which means like for the amount of followers I had, I was getting like some crazy number. This is back in February, like 2,000 comments a post type stuff. You go way back, you're going to see these crazy blown up posts. And I was generating all of these leads and they were just horrible lead quality. And because I used to I have this whole formula, it's even in my school group about how to create lead bait to go viral. And I can do it. I could do it today and go get, I just did one last week for the fun of it, where I was like, I got scammed was like the headline. And it was like developer A, developer B. And this is a true story where like a guy from North Korea used AI, a deep fake to pose as a Polish developer. And then on the second call, he forgot his mask. That actually happened. But the reason I bring that up is that okay, that got 300 likes and it got, 300 comments. And I could do that every day if I wanted to. But it's like meaningless traffic. It's like, why? And so for me, I purposely niche down on traffic because for me, it's like, if people watch my stuff, it's hyper focused on it. And I have seen that I still fill up my calendar, but it's like they jump on the call and it's like perfectly placed ICP. Whereas I don't have to have some weird filter of did you come from this weird thing that I did? So that's kind of an interesting insight because most people go through for just pure volume. And I go for hyper quality. This podcast will only be watched by 200 people. But anybody watching this podcast is a crazy person about sales.
Well, you're talking about North Koreans. We also had at least 3 attempts by North Koreans also applying for the Forge. So it was definitely fun times. It's definitely a problem. There's a podcast, by the way, on this somewhere out there. I was listening to it. Yes, North Koreans are applying for jobs in the US and in Europe. The fun fact is when they join the company, they actually do the work. It's just that I think the funniest case was that somebody got into a cybersecurity company. So they were working as an engineer in a cybersecurity company. Yeah, that was something crazy, really. But But yeah, I mean, that's what happens in the world of remote. I think that there's also that challenge, I think, right? So who is actually working at your company? You have never met these people. Like in my case, I have
so true.
never met the 70% of my company, to be honest. And I have to trust them on a daily basis, right? That they're good people and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a crazy world that we live in. But at the same time, I think it's pretty fun. I mean, because you can find good talent all around the world. I mean, listen, we are it's what's called the talent war, right? So we are all fighting for talent. We're all building software companies these days, and a lot of also smart, I think, software developers. They're also building their own software as well today, and then other people are building through Lovable or whatever, So there's a lot going on. So yes, this is a bloody, sort of market that we're in right now, but the whole software space is getting crazy, and so there's a lot of activity. People get super excited about being able to build super niche tools for different kind of spaces, and it's just interesting to see how the world is progressing. Just really, this is also why I'm thinking that it doesn't matter which category we're all in. There's still a lot of disruption to come due to how things are being shaken up. So yeah.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go back through what you just said. So the first thing was just following up on the developer stuff. It wasn't just the North Koreans. It was like, I would say like 70% of my interviews in the first interview have been BS. So what I do, like my interview process for developers is like one, okay, I'm not going to say what I was just going to say. I'm very specific on the regions of the world that I focus on because I found very good developers. Spoiler alert, Eastern Europe, by far the best in my experience. So then like after that, as a qualifier, I then will ask people to do a test. Now people will be like, yeah, but the senior guys won't do the test. And I'm like, okay, then they won't work for me. It's a filtering mechanism. It says a lot about somebody. And I found amazing senior developers that will take the test. So I had the test. It's just called Test Gorilla. And it's a very basic test that asks for basic logic, basic, algorithms and basic clean code. And you get them to write some code. And it asks for an IP address and it films them doing it. And so then what I'll do is I'll put them through that. If they do well on that, I check that their face, this sounds so stupid, I check that their face matches the profile picture. And so sometimes they don't know that they're being filmed like that, which is weird because it says it in it says you're going to be filmed, but sometimes they don't recognize it. And so the other day, this guy's like, I finished the test and I'm like, okay, great. And I opened it up and I'm like, that's not the same guy, and I'm like, what the hell is going on here? So you got to be, and he's like, oh, I'm from Ukraine. And I'm like, yeah, but it says you're in La Paz, Bolivia. He's like, oh, I was using a VPN. And I'm like, yeah, but it doesn't even look like you. I'm like, he's like, yeah. And it's like, I don't think I can work for you for the next couple of weeks. I'm like, you're never going to work for me. But that was another one I was on the other day. This makes me extremely skeptical of Asian developers, and this sounds horrible to say, but it's like with what's happened now 3 times in a row, all North Korean situation, where guy gets on, and I'm like, so this is another filter I have now. If it says they speak a language, I immediately say, speak the language. And they're like I have to speak this? This guy said he spoke Danish. I think it was Dutch. No, Dutch. And I'm like, he's like, do you speak Dutch? And I'm like, yeah. And I don't speak Dutch, but I just wanted to see if he would speak it. And so he spoke it, and I have a voice translator, and I'm like, that's not Dutch, So that gets rid of the guy. And then I'm like, another thing I do is I say, share your screen first thing. And they're like, right now? I'm like, yeah, right now. I want you to share your screen. But why? And then he's like, well, I think you should respect my privacy. And I'm like, I'm not asking for anything personal. Just share the screen. So then he fumbles around, and it's like, if they're not willing to share the screen immediately, that's a big problem. Then he shares the screen, and it's clearly has this Microsoft top thing that hides all other things. So I'm like, that's a problem. And then he just completely cuts out from the call. He leaves. So it's like people are using these fake AI readers, these things that prompt you. They're using deep fakes. So I have people do this now. It's so stupid, but I literally have people go do that. And it's I never thought we'd be in this world, but you gotta ask kind of stupidly dumb questions. Where are you? What language do you speak? That kind of stuff.
I have a very good case, by the way. It has nothing to do with AI. So we hired this guy, and this guy, he's also a developer from from Eastern Europe, but he was Iranian from Estonia, which is where we are incorporated. And everything was fine. We hired the guy, but then we started to notice something, that he was always in this flat with very, very green walls. And in this part of the world, Eastern Europe, and green walls like that, it's just not a thing. It doesn't look like this part of the world. So then after like a month or something, actually maybe after a few weeks, the CTO says, can you just show me how it looks like outside of the window, outside there? Because he didn't feel like he is actually in Eastern Europe. And then we realized he's in Iran, actually. So he was like, there's nothing wrong with Iran for us. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, but like the fact that you lied us about your location,
Right?
You
That's
were
what matters.
dishonest, and we just simply realized purely based on the walls that the guy had, they didn't look like the walls in our part of the world, So that's how we realized he's probably not from there. So then we saw that, what he showed us outside didn't look like Eastern Europe. It looked like somewhere in the Middle East, And so he's like, oh, I'm really sorry. I'm actually based in Iran. I was lying, the whole time. So not being honest, definitely crosses a few lines, and then it doesn't bode well with my CTO. Like the simple thing that we ask from people is just honesty, and I think it is tricky when people work remote. I understand the benefits of working remote, but at the same time, so many challenges with the remote thing. I'm personally a big guy, when it comes to being in the office. We do have an office of about 10 people, but at the same time, I know I'm not going to find all the people I'm looking for, and for them all to be in the office. So about 70% of our company is somewhere in the world, But I haven't found, a better sort of way of working, I guess. Yes, I mean, it is what it is. So
we're just kind of picking on the developers right now because I just happen to be hiring for developers, but I also hire. So people are like, well, you have all these things that you're doing. I have a agency, which is a RevOps agency that happens to do some cold email on occasion. We're actually not taking on more cold email clients because we're having so much success with RevOps that we're focused on that. But a part of that, I have some lineage older clients where I'm the fractional CRO. And so I still help with some of the hiring on occasion. It's light work, but the point is that it's I do the hiring. So that means I have a recruiting firm, and I do the final interviews, and I have something called Scale Ops. So at Next Gen Sales Systems, which is my RevOps GTM agency, Scale Ops is our goal, our flagship program. And so what it does is we go in and we fully set up a CRM built on the Close platform, fully automated with our full sales process and an entire inside selling methodology. We only take on very select clients at very specific stages of growth. But that's what we do. And so sometimes we will support with the hiring of the new sales reps in those scenarios. So I get a lot of shots at goal across multiple companies, and I see the different types of talent pools for the sales reps too. And it's just the same thing. I hire for sales support, I hire for SDRs, I hire for mid-level account executives, and for sales managers, marketing managers, so the whole nine. And I get to see a lot of resumes, thousands of resumes come across my desk through a filter, so I see the last ones. But my point is that now, having seen it across a number of companies, the amount of bullshit that happens in a remote work environment is absurd. It makes you question humanity. It makes me question humanity, because I can tell you that the vast majority, by the vast majority, I mean 90%, which sounds insane, are doing some type of deceptive thing. Now, it might be minor, right? It might be hey, I'm going to try to work less hours and pretend like I'm working more with fake keystroke stuff. That's happened. It could be major, I blatant lies. I don't know. I did a bunch of research this morning. That's why no sales calls went out. Okay, show me the agency. Show me the research. I just was looking, Looking at what? What are you looking at? We had somebody who had their car stolen the other morning. I cannot get a police report, so I cannot verify. I've had guys where I'm so certain that they are full of it, where I'm like, okay, look, I'm not a micromanager, but in your scenario, you have to go on a clock. You got to like log in with an IP tracker because I just don't trust that what you're saying. And I'm like, we're at the last stage here, buddy. And an hour later, quit. And so like the point is like there's so many things where people are trying to they're savvy. So they're like, hey, they're the sales rep. They're basically like hidden agencies. That's what I've seen happen, is that there's like these guys that are good on camera, they speak well, they're articulate, they're smart, they'll sell you, but they effectively have like 5 other people below them working for them. And they're going to go outsource a bunch of the work. And so it's going to look disjointed. And when you ask them questions, they're not going to be able to give you a clear answer. And for me, it's like, it's fine if you're an agency, but just say you're an agency and just say that you have people doing work for you. Right. So it's more about an integrity issue for me. And I think that's happening a lot with these developers is you have a really bright senior developer who could be a crusher if he wanted to for your company. But he's making 10 times the money by outsourcing a bunch of subcontracts and just showing up as the face on these dev environments. So anyways, that's my diatribe for remote work. But I to this very moment, it is so hard to find great people. But when you do, it's like output of 20 people times 1,000. I mean, it's like, it's crazy. But it's hard to find them and it's hard to filter for them because everyone interviews well.
Yeah,
so how do you overcome this? Like, what's your filter?
What's my filter? That's a good question. I mean, generally speaking, the way that we hire people is we don't really try and hire for what we call for experience, but what we try and predict what impact they could do for us. And sometimes people have no experience, literally, under their belt, and they end up being like superstar employees, and they come from some random sort of kind of industry sometimes. Or even, just the backgrounds are kind of very, very odd. I think that can work quite well. But when it comes to filters, I don't know. I kind of follow kind of similar process that you have. Let's say on the dev front, we also have like, because stage 1 is we just qualify people. We definitely, it is always a competence task. So that's stage 2. And then the final stage is, we treat that quite seriously, is the cultural stage. So we just have a conversation with you. And through that conversation, you can kind of sense that there are issues. And so we would ask just, very simple things like what would your colleagues, tell about you? Or what would your manager tell about you? What do you like to do in your spare time? What excites you? And you just kind of, try to understand what sort of human they are, kind of in a way, right? So, because, in our case, we're not looking for similar people to us, but we're looking for what we call culture add, but they have to be what I call humans with a lot of common sense. And one of my friends said, there's not a lot of common sense, in this world. And but yeah, you do that sort of weird de-risking, a lot of weird de-risking where that happens in the culture interview. And so all 3 founders get involved because we're all trying to kind of figure out, there's something wrong. There's something, so we literally, sometimes, there's like super fantastic engineers that we tried to hire, this sort of former CTO of another startup, and we just didn't hire because something felt off in the culture stage. So I think that was, so if you follow just this sort of process called qualification, competence, and kind of task, and then culture check, it works quite well. And no need for references because the references are all bullshit, I find. Yeah, so if something feels off, it's most likely there's something wrong with that person. Just don't hire them. I think you'll typically regret. So I'm a very good predictor that we're gonna eventually fire them. But actually, one thing that we do, which I think makes us different to everybody else, is that we hire what we call an 80-20 basis, as in when we have 80% conviction about the person, we'll hire them, right? But as long as they pass all the stages, everything's fine. And sure, there's a lot of sort of unanswered sort of questions, but like, doesn't matter. Let's go. So we just give them a laptop, give them a budget, everything that they need. But we have this very strict 3 months probation period, and where by the end of it, in a typical company, you would pass probation. But in our case, by the end of it, you'll be terminated typically. And that's the default. The default, you get terminated by the end of it. So what happens is we build a business case amongst the 3 co-founders, and there's another person who's in the leadership team. So all of us have to be in agreement that this person will stay in the company. And if at least one person vetoes, any person can veto, then this person is out. So we did exercise our veto rights a few times. So where we could not agree, everybody, that this person should stay in the company. So that's just a slightly different way of doing things. But yeah, that means multiple people are discussing that person. You can think of that probation period like a test drive, right? So we're not really sure whether you're a good fit or not. The best thing to do is hire you as soon as we can. So hire fast, but then you fire them faster, as in, within 3 months. Like 3 months is all you have. And there are some CEOs that I've been listening to on podcasts, etc. A lot of them will say that within 2 weeks, you can already, with a good predictability, you can already kind of see whether you're going to be keeping them or not. And I kind of have a similar thing in my head where I can already say after a week or two whether we got to keep them or not. I already see signs, But of course, we're going to give them, another couple of months, to see because we will, when we see problems with people, we'll try and make them steer in the right direction. And if that fails, then they're out, So, yeah, but I think you just assume by default they're not going to stay around. And I think then you start thinking about people differently. You're trying to build a business. Should I really keep them, Because, a lot of people think like, oh, yeah, by default, they're staying in the company. Not in our case.
Yeah. There's a quote that I like to adhere to that I heard a while back, which is, if there's any doubt, there's no doubt, which is a good framework to say, like, if there's even a slight doubt, there's no doubt that you should be let go. Because it's like superstars, there's no doubt. Now, superstars, who said this? I think this comes from one of the PayPal Mafia guys, but he's like, superstars will piss you off. Like, they're going to annoy you because they're going to challenge you and they're going to have strong opinions. But getting pissed off is not a grounds for letting somebody go. In fact, it's probably a good thing because it means challenge is occurring, meaning debate is occurring. But it's like, when I say, is there a doubt? I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, like, do you think they're actually doing the work? Do you think they're actually adding value? Do you think that they're, like, if you have to question that, it's like, then clearly there's something else going on. Because the superstars, it's like, just like, oh my God, did you see what that guy did again? Oh my God. Like a day later, it's like, holy shit. It's like, it's oozing performance. It's oozing amazingness. Yeah. So for us, like, what we do is, I came up with the 3-day challenge. This is, sometimes it's a 1-day challenge, sometimes it's a 2-day challenge. But the idea is my interview process is to hire fast, like yours is. I mean, there's a bunch of like screening stuff and making sure that they just do the most basic stuff. But then I literally hire them for a day. And I say, don't quit your job. I want to hire you for a day, and I'm going to give you this, whatever the test is. It's different by person. If it's a developer, like, I'll say, I want you to, like, a front-end developer, code this page. If it's a back-end developer, like, I want you to fix these bugs. Just like whatever, like, thing it might be. If it's a senior sales rep, I give them what I call my $1 million pitch book, and then I have them learn it, and then I have them pitch in my framework, and I have a grading sheet to see if they follow the pitch. If it's an SDR, I throw them on the calls in a dialer with 100 people, and I see if they can, get a couple good conversations going. So like it's all unique to the position, but I test them, and in that process, like, one, I always ask everybody, and this, I actually got this from somebody on one of the guests a few months ago. So this is a new thing I added, which is I ask everybody to fire themselves before I do. So I say, like, look, I'm going to hire you. You're going to know before me if this is a good fit because you're going to be deeply involved in it. I'm only going to talk to you at the start and then at the end, but you're going to have a whole emotional experience as you go through my training materials and as you try to, pitch our product and services. So you're going to know pretty quickly if this is jiving. And if there's even an inkling, like, I want you to use the same principle I'm going to use for you, which is, if there's any doubt, there's no doubt, fire yourself. And I'll still pay you the full day. So it's like, you're incentivized to quit, right? I'm like, I'll give you all the money if you quit the first moment. So that's like a piece I do. Now, if they get past that, I do have, like, all the people on the key hiring team need to say yes. And then when they get in, like, I say, like, look, like, you're still not hired, you're hired, but there's 2 weeks. If it's a senior hire, like a manager level or above, I fly them in. So I bring them in, and I live in Las Vegas. I'll take them to an Italian restaurant I like to go to. It's always the same one. And then like I sit them down, and people get kind of loose. Like you bring them to Vegas, they see the lights, it's like, oh shit, I'm here. The waiters are kind of fun. And so they get a little relaxed. And I say, look, and I always tell them like, look, this isn't a job interview. I just want you to be yourself. No, it is a job interview. like let's just be real. And so I just had a guy fly out last week, and it was like super professional on the first 3 to 4 calls, delivered a nice little 90-day plan for a marketing manager role. And then he flies out and he sits down, and I was there with my director of customer success, and we're sitting there, and he just was very like overly relaxed, kind of like, the shirt wide open. He has like a bunch of necklaces, which is fine. It's kind of weird to go to a formal like business dinner. And then he like, his hands are kind of in my face, kind of like just a lot of this. And I'm like, getting very handsy. And then I asked him a simple question. Like, there's like the hug test. It's like, you can't tell if you want to hug somebody over a call, but like when you get in front of them, you're like, okay, this sounds really weird. Not that I like to hug everybody, but you get the sense of like, is this guy cool? Like, would I want to give him a hug if we were buddies, or female? And this is not sexual. This is purely like just a human intuition kind of. Are they a cool person? And immediately the guy was like, I saw him coming through the windshield. I'm like, I don't like that guy. It was like this immediate thing that you can't know until they're in person. And then we sit down, and I noticed that my director of customer success isn't saying anything, and I'm like, looking at her, and I'm looking at him, and I just start asking some basic questions. So like, why are you interested in marketing? Kind of a basic question. Now, if you asked me, I have a deep answer to that question. And he was just like, why are you asking me? And I'm like, because you're applying for the director of marketing. Like, what do you mean? Like, why am I asking you? It's like a pretty relevant question given the circumstances, But it was like this kind of terse back and forth where he was no longer friendly and amicable. It was all of a sudden, it was like this weird kind of vibe, and he would just sit very close like this. And I just, the whole thing like was off. And so after the dinner, I was just like, man, like should we move forward with them? And it was like, if there's any doubt, there's no doubt, And there was just a lot of red flags, so we didn't hire him.
So it's a cultural.
I'm very interested in this.
It's for us, it's a culture stage, right? So we also like when we interview somebody, who's on the ground, we would ask them to come for a dinner or lunch or whatever that is, just at least for 30 minutes, even to grab a coffee, to be honest. And you will have that feeling that something is off and you don't want to hire them. Like there's a bunch of kind of different examples here, but I think one of the things we try and kind of use this sort of framework that I picked up, I think, a few years ago, the 4-pillar framework, where we look at kind of 4 things that we're trying to predict in the person. So one is performance. So do we have like evidence to suggest, let's say, even in the interview stages, like that they've been performing in the past in a bunch of different jobs? The second one is competence. So when we speak to them, can we sense the competence? You can the people that will talk to you about MQLs and SQLs, and how do they think about it, and you kind of can sense that they are very competent. Commitment pillar, you can just ask them, what's the proudest thing they've done in the previous job, and you're like, oh yeah, that sounds good. And then the final one is the culture. So these are the 4 pillars, how we sort of try and sort of predict whether people are going to be really good. And then that's exactly the framework that we evaluate them during the probation period and then for promos and stuff like that. Performance, that's purely KPI. Competence. So competence kind of, when you join the company, so you have X competence, and we need to see that you're massively accelerating on a daily basis. There's so much to learn at the Forge. Like, so if you're not a different human next week, I'm very surprised, right? So if you're exactly the same person and you have not learned much, then yeah, I'm very surprised. Commitment, naturally, how committed are you to yourself? If you say you're going to get it done tomorrow, you'll get it done, your stuff tomorrow. And then culture is a thing where, you come into the office and say, let's go, right? So, and you don't say things like, damn, everything's, crap, and, everything's bad, So we have that. So like culture is a thing that we have let go people as well. And it's something that we're constantly thinking about, because sometimes you have people that have, they're very, very good, and during the interview stages, they pass the probation period, whatever, and they stick around in it for a few months, but suddenly something happens after a quarter or two. And so for us, the way we are constantly sort of, let's call it evaluating people, let's call it monitoring people. There's no system for that, but you can just kind of sense in Slack, literally, our Slack is very active, and you can sense these things when something is not working anymore, right? And you're trying to investigate. And the best way that I found to investigate on a particular individual, I'm just going to ask another person. Can you provide me some feedback on this person? That's all I'm asking. And once you realize, damn, it's not looking really good, then you ask another person. So I'm asking 2 or 3 individuals, whether there's that pattern as well that we can see. And then we're trying to see what shall we do about it. But typically when we see that something is off, is actually in Slack. So when people are essentially disengaged on a lot of things. So I'm a big believer that, if you're really committed to the company, there will be engagement from most individuals in the company. So you can definitely start seeing, let's call it signals. So a lot of people are all about, signal-based, outbound and all that stuff. We do a lot of signaling within Slack to try and understand what's our perception on every person in the company, from activity levels to what they say, how quickly they get engaged, how quickly they get inside, what do they actually write, do they participate in the most active channel in the company called LOL. It's the most active. There's a lot of stuff that goes on there. Are they there's even just a thing, are you having fun? And if you can see that you're not having fun while you're doing your job, something is up. Maybe something happened in the family, sure, but if you're not having fun, we have a problem essentially. So you need to be having fun at the Forge. It's a very hard, work. Doesn't matter whether you work in sales or engineering, but you need to be having fun. So yeah.
There's everything I'm saying, except for the 3-day challenge, that was original to me. I'm sure people have done it before, but something that I thought of on my own. But the thing that really has shifted for me in the last year, I would say, is I got this from, I think it was Andrew Wang. I don't know. It was some founder guy. And he's like, I'm like, what's the number one criteria that you hire on? And it's kind of you have your pillars. And so this was his pillar. His pillar was give a damn. And it was I really just want to know if somebody really cares. And I want to know why they care. And there's a great book, I don't have it on my desk, called Drive, which talks about what causes humans to perform, what gives people drive. The concept of ambition and drive and give a damn, whatever you want to call it, is a very interesting study. And in the book, Drive kind of breaks it down pretty well. And basically, the whole book argues that, look, in the past, pre-70s, people thought everything was external drive, which was fame, status, power, money, that kind of stuff. And the book argues that most of the core parts of drive that keep us going forward every single day and attempting and giving a shit is actually what they call intrinsic motivation, which is I want to learn, I want to create, I'm just deeply curious, I just want to see what's going to happen, right? And so these are the things that can start to motivate people. And so for me, what I've noticed is that the top performers aren't doing it for money. They're not doing it for the status. There's some level of I just want to see if I can do it. There's a kind of a self-challenge of I will be the best. Why? I don't know. I just will be. That's going to happen. And so the thing I've started to do, this is relatively recently in the last 6 months, is really try to uncover why will you care? Why do you care? Why does this thing even interest you? And the guy at the dinner was the perfect wrong answer, which was why will you care? Because you're paying me to. And I'm wrong answer. That's not the right answer. There needs to be something much deeper than that. And so I don't know. I just maybe it could just be 1,000 things. It could be I really am passionate about this thing. It's what I think about. It could be, I have a goal to be X, Y, Z in 5 years, and I see this as a critical path that I'm going to get there. And I need to learn this skill, or I need to do these things. It could just be, deep competitive drive. It could just be I want to be in sales. I like the thing. and I think you guys have a good brand, but I want to be the top of the food chain. And I see this as an industry I want to be in. I like you that you're positioning in it, and I want to be the best of this particular spot. So there's a bunch of good answers, but it can never just be like, you're paying me to, you know? And that was a huge red flag. So do you think about that? And if so, how do you gauge give a damn? How do you see if somebody really cares or not?
I think this is a hard one, whether they give a damn or not. I think, so I mentioned, we're trying to get people into a seat as quickly as we can, and then trying to observe them, right? So we give a damn. So we have a pillar for that commitment, right? So do you give a damn? And I think one way that we've seen when people do give a damn is when they proactively, and this is everybody in the company, proactively essentially voicing about the issues that we have in the business. And I think people that are silent, essentially, they don't voice any issues whatsoever, they're the ones where we have some sort of issue. But when people give a damn, they're typically very vocal. They provide always feedback. They don't shy away to provide that feedback in a public channel, in Slack. So we have quite a policy where we want to make sure most of the comms is in public channels. But they don't shy away to raise concerns, and doing that on a daily basis. And tag the right people, and making sure that they keep repeating the same problem until it's actually solved. So that's for us like giving a damn, and you can kind of see that from individuals. But if somebody else says, hey, everything's fine, but then you're unable to hit your targets, and you're always saying you don't need any help, etc., then yeah, something is broken there. But the one thing that I typically look at, these days, I'm getting more and more biased towards these people. So apart from kind of giving a damn, I'm now seeing a lot more signals. What is a good employee, I guess, is somebody who's AI native. So you give them a problem, or it could be the competence task for an engineer, etc. And the way they have solved that task is they use a bunch of AI tooling, or multiple AI tools, where what they put together is, I've never seen anything like this, and they used a lot of AI, but you don't look at that from a negative lens. I think a lot of people are like, damn, he has used AI. How dare you using AI? And I'm like, no. First of all, we're an AI company. Like, goddamn, that's really good that you leverage the AI to get to your output that we're looking for. But like in the AI, the native employees are just in a different mindset, right? They're very hacky, essentially, right? So they're trying to figure out how do they get to their end goal with the least possible input, right? So they are typically thinking about to use AI. And I think you can kind of also sense that you can just ask, I think also just simply in the initial interview process, do you use ChatGPT? And well, hopefully they got to answer yes. Some people say no. And you got to say, why don't you use ChatGPT, right? So what's the problem? But if you do use ChatGPT, what do you use it for? And I think the more you dig into kind of how do they use ChatGPT, or how do you use AI tools, you start to understand the way they think about problems and how to get to solutions. And you'll find that majority of people that have this sort of overlap with using a lot of tools, there's so much, very, very good fit with your company, and they naturally will typically outperform those people that don't use any form of AI tooling. So we definitely see this sort of clear divide, and we become more and more biased. So we typically would say these days we're trying to hire AI native workforce because we do see better, I guess, compatibility with what we're doing. And I think other companies are kind of on the similar page there as well.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because it's funny. I sometimes candidates try to like read through the question, and then they're like, oh, they could make a judgment call, which is like they're asking because they want to see if I'm going to BS and not work hard. And so therefore I don't use AI because that's what they want to hear. But ironically, like here we are, it's like, no, we want you to use AI. And I do too. Like when I'm like, this guy is getting beat up. I hope he doesn't listen to this podcast. I asked him, I'm like, he provided the first version of the 90-day plan. And I'm like, did you use AI? And he goes, no. And I'm like, why not? And he was just like, I wanted you to see my actual work. And I'm like, I don't care if it's your actual work. Like in terms of like, I want you to have done it, but I want like, you could have had a 4x better output. I'm like, we're going to do it another challenge. I want you to use AI this time. I want to see how you can improve it. And so that was like the second part of the test. But yeah, all of my guys, everyone has a subscription to the best one for ChatGPT. And let's put it this way. If your coders, if your devs are not coding using AI, like I don't know what they're doing, because like it's like who doesn't code with AI at this point, you know? I mean, the whole junior dev position is in question because like basically anybody, I mean, you and I could be like junior devs enough if like we wanted to, you know? So yeah, AI is so critical. So I know we've been on for 90 minutes. We're probably going to run out of time here in a second. But what I like to do is to finish things up. We'll obviously have to have a follow-up to go deeper. So, you know, if there's like one thing you could leave on planet Earth, business, not business, whatever, I'm not going to plant seeds. What would you want the world to know?
What would they want the world to know? That's a good question. Nobody has ever asked me that. Leave on the planet of, well, I'm assuming I'm off to the moon or somewhere, right? So, and I just left something on the planet Earth, right?
No, I mean, like, you know, like it could be terminal illness. It could be you're never going to see, you're going to the future. Any scenario, but you're leaving, and you get to land one last thing. What is the thing you want, like in the annals of history, to say, this is what I learned on planet Earth?
That's a good one. It's such a, I don't know, philosophical question. I'm not good with these. I mean, I would say, I don't know, my mind drifts towards AI. I think a fair bit right now. I'm not sure why, but like ultimately, yeah. I actually don't know, to be honest.
That's a good answer. If you don't know, you don't know.
I just don't know. Yeah. Nothing comes to mind. Let's move on to the next question. Yeah, I'm not very good with this one.
So it's interesting because, you know, I have a men's group that I go to, and I'm really I'm a believer in self-development, and I believe that, you know, especially like us entrepreneurs, we get so focused on the game, because let's not like pretend we're playing a game right now, right? Even if your company imploded tomorrow, you are probably never going to go hungry. You know, you would find another thing pretty quickly. You're obviously smart and capable. You may even start another company and succeed rather quickly. So the question is then, like, why do we do what we do, right? And so I guess what I'm saying is, like, for me, like, I like to think about these deeper questions. And I think, which sounds weird to say, I think about death a lot, because, and not in a morbid, like horror type sense, but more in terms of like a philosophical sense of like, what does it mean to die, or what does it mean to live? Kind of very stoic in that sense. But so I had this group of guys that I meet with every Monday through something called the Mankind Project. I recommend anybody who is a man, there's something called Women Within, where you can check that out, Google it. But basically it's like, there's this whole, I'm giving this context because it came from the group last night, that there's this philosophy that in the past, from where we came from, wherever that might be, Africa, wherever, you know, there used to be tribes, and tribes used to have a rite of passage for men and for women. And that we've lost that kind of cultural transformation as individuals when we come into manhood or womanhood. And some religions have it, like, you know, in the Jewish tradition, it's the bar mitzvah, for example. But anyways, I digress. The point I'm trying to say is that, like, I was at this thing yesterday, and they give you a weekly thing to think about. And the thing they asked was, if you had 14 months left to live or 12 months left to live, what would you, and you were at this meeting, what would be the last thing you would want to either have worked on or said? What would you want to say? And that came up last night. And I honestly, like, I was thinking about, like, what work, when they say work, they mean like what personal inner work would you want to do? And I had this, like, my thing was, I don't know. I gave the same answer that you did. I was like, I don't know, because that's a deep question. And so then what I proceeded to do was get up in front of the group, because you can basically stand in the middle of the group, and the you get somebody who like facilitates and they lead you through this inquisition of like asking questions to get to the core root of like what it would be. And at first I was like, the biggest thing that that's been holding me back has been this feeling of being rejected by other groups. And that's actually like, and I actually even brought up, I'm super open to being authentic here, and vulnerable, is that like there's in the cold email, cold lead gen world, there is like clicks. And I have this weird childhood like feeling of like being rejected from some clicks, which is kind of weird. It's like a weird thing that comes up for me because it is cliquish. It's kind of high school in our industry. And so that wound was coming up, and I remember they're like, okay, what does that look like? And so they actually have you position your body. So like I'm positioned away from the group. I'm like, it feels like this. And so they're like, well, what are you worried about? And I'm like, I guess I'm worried about looking really bad. I'm worried about like saying something stupid or like being rejected by the group, basically abandoned essentially. And so they're like, well, and so then the facilitator turned around and he's like, well, what's the worst thing that could happen right now? Like, what's the worst thing you could do that would alienate the group? And at the top of my mind, I was like, I don't know, get naked and run around like crazy. Now I didn't do that, but I was like something like that. And they're like, and I guess start like erratically like singing and doing stupid stuff that would just make me seem like a crazy person. And then they're like, well, like, what would you do? Like, so you're saying, so your work right now is to overcome this fear of acceptance, right? And I went on this trail, and then I just realized, I'm like, it like hit me like a brick wall, which it was like, I was so focused on me. Like, what would I do for myself in the last 14 months? Overcoming this abandonment issue, that kind of thing. And I was just like, that's not what the fuck I would do. You know what I would do? And then I turned around and I was like, I would just tell you all I love you. And that was just like the brutal truth. It was like, and I was like, I would look at every single one of you and I'd say, I appreciate you as a human being. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting me in any way you have. And this is a hard life. We're all doing hard things here. We don't know why we're here, ultimately, religious or not religious. At the end of the day, nobody ultimately knows. And I just appreciate you. And I just want you to know. And it's been good sharing this planet with you. That's what I would say. And it was like, it hit me so obviously that I'm like, so focused on me. How am I going to solve my little like problems? And I'm like, it's bullshit. It's like, we're here. I appreciate you. It's been a good run. Kumbaya, baby. Let's go out. That's what I would say. So it came up for me last night, but I also had the same reaction you did at first. And I was like, man, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I see where you're coming from.
Last thing, where can people find you? Where online? Any website, LinkedIn profiles?
And the typical spot, you can find me on LinkedIn, Frank Sondors, the guy with the bacon emoji. Comes from the saying, bringing home the bacon, so. Okay. Yes, or you can just go to our website. The guy with the bacon emoji.
And what's the website? Comes
from the saying, bringing home the bacon, yes.
Salesforge.io.
Salesforge.
Okay, it will be in the show notes below, everyone. So we'll put in the LinkedIn profile, the website. Go follow Frank on all the platforms, of course. Go check them out. Sign up for a demo. Be the right ICP. Be in sales and marketing. You're obviously the right ICP if you're listening to this. So thank you so much for coming on. I guess I will say bye to everybody, and we'll see you guys on the next episode of the Next Gen Sales Leaders podcast. I'll see you guys later. Bye.